Imagine yourself adorned in the academic regalia, standing before a sea of applause as you receive your diploma. But pause for a moment. How did you navigate the labyrinth of academia to reach this pinnacle? Welcome to the captivating world of reverse engineering your goals, where the journey unfolds in beautiful ways. In today's video, we'll be talking about one of the most unconventional ways to setting goals. And I promise you, if you stay till the end, you'll find things that probably would help you become better at setting goals. We'll be talking about reverse engineering your goal. And the concept behind this basically is, instead of having a vague idea, having a goal, and then working towards it, you act like you have already achieved this particular thing that you now want to achieve, and then you work back from it. It's basically like doing a task or redoing a target that you have hit before. The only difference is that in most cases you probably haven't done it before. Think of it as starting at the finish line and then working your way back to where you started. Starting with the end in mind basically gives you a clearer picture of what you want to achieve, and then it makes mapping out the strategies to get there much quicker and then much clearer. It's basically the same principle that God uses. It's like God, of course, he knows the end from the beginning. So it means that everything he does is sort of like in line with that. So everything that he does is basically in line with the fact that he knows the end already. So we know the end, or at least we have an end pictured in our head. And so everything that we are doing is basically from working back from that. And this mindset shifts is one of the most powerful tools to setting your goals properly and actually achieving them, instead of having a vague idea and sort of like working towards it. Before we get into some of the steps you need to take to reverse engineering your goals the right way, let's talk about why exactly you should start reverse engineering your goals, or why you should adopt this method. The first step to reverse engineering your goal is having a vision, having a desired outcome of what you want to achieve. So basically, instead of working towards a goal, you're working from a goal. And this basically creates a powerful sense of purpose. It creates a powerful sense of direction even from the outset. And genuinely, this is how I live my life. Because I've seen a glimpse of my end, I've seen a glimpse of what God would have me be. There are certain things I can't do, certain jobs I can't take, certain positions I just cannot hold, because I have seen a bit of the end. The second reason is it focuses on the system. Unlike traditional goal setting that has to do with SMART goals, you set specific, measurable, and all these type of goals. Instead of focusing on the goal, your gaze is now shifted to the system to achieving that goal. Because like I said, the first step in reverse engineering is having that vision in your head. That's already sorted out. We're acting like we have already achieved that. So the major part of this formula or of this method is how we intend to get towards that particular goal. So we are focusing on the system, we're focusing on the strategies, we're focusing on the hows, we're focusing on the techniques to getting towards that goal, instead of saying, oh, okay, I want to get a 5.0 at the end of the semester. You say that's your goal, you paste on your wall, paste in your wardrobe. I promise you, I'm not even shading, right? But with reverse engineering, you're focusing on the how, and of course that makes it easier to attain the goal that you have set. And finally, process over target. Unlike traditional goal setting method, you are focused on the target, but here you are focused on the process. With reverse engineering, you're sort of like distributing the journey. So you're walking back from what you have achieved to where you are now, right? And you're breaking these things down into little chunks of milestones that you need to achieve. And what this does is it helps you to have a proper understanding of what it actually takes to achieve success. So now we've talked about the why exactly you need to adopt reverse engineering your goals. But before you click off this video, I want to give you a step-by-step guide to reverse engineering your goals. What are the things that you need to do in order to actually achieve these goals, or in order to adopt this method that we're talking about? But just to make it more relatable, I'm going to use a practical example. So say the end goal that you have in mind is to become a famous podcaster, right? To become someone that has a wonderful podcast, has a lot of listeners and a lot of opportunities that come from that. I'd be giving a 7 step-by-step process on how you can master reverse engineering your goal. Number 1 goes without saying, and it is envision your goal. I would advise that you take probably a couple days to do this, because the idea is not that you have a goal in mind. The idea is you think of the goal as something you sort of like have achieved before. So just like the introduction of the video, if your goal is to graduate with a first class, or get your diploma, whatever, basically you have that image in front of your head, right? And you want to think of this as something that you have achieved. So I advise that you take a couple days to do this, right? And the meditation of this is not what is going to help you get that goal. Like, you meditating about this is not what's going to help you get that goal. All you want to do is know how it actually feels to have achieved what is currently in your head. So for example, if my goal is to have a six figure, if my goal is to have like an eight-figure business, right, I would sit down and I would imagine how that feels. Like, how does it feel to actually have a business worth that much? What are the kind of things that I'd be doing? Who are the people that I can help? How much food would I be eating, right? So I would sit down and actually think of how this would affect my life, and I would soak all of that in. Like I said, this is not what would help you achieve the goal. You just want to know how it feels, and then once you know how it feels, you can go over to the next step. Let's use like a name. It would help me remember this better. So let's say Tony wants to be a podcaster. The first thing Tony would need to do would be to visualize being a popular podcaster. He would have to soak in all the effects of being a podcaster. So what kind of opportunities would he now get because a lot of people listen to him? What are the kind of comments he would receive because he's now changing the lives of people? All of these kind of things. So he's soaking that in. Now I want you to remember something. Because reverse engineering is different from the natural goal setting, you're not working towards a goal, you're working from a goal. So sort of the things that you ask yourself are going to be in past tense. The question you're asking yourself, they're going to be in past tense. So the second step, identify milestones. So the way this question is going to come to yourself is, okay, I have achieved becoming a popular podcaster, a famous podcaster, an influencer, and everything. What are the milestones that I faced in achieving this? You asking yourself these questions in past tense shifts your mind, right? It makes you seem like someone who has actually achieved these things. If you're saying, okay, what are the milestones that I might face, then it's obviously something you want to achieve, but we are working back from a goal. So what are the milestones that I faced in achieving this? So the first milestone that Tony might have faced would be to think of a catchy and a simple podcast name, right? He will need to think of something like that, something that resonates with his audience and something that is not so ambiguous. Another milestone that Tony could have faced would be creating high quality episodes, right? Because it might have been difficult. Maybe at the start he didn't have enough gear, right? He didn't have the proper tools, or he was shy, basically creating high quality episodes. And the third would be building a dedicated listener base, and a large one at that. These are sort of like the milestones that Tony would have faced, and I implore you to think of this, of course, in line with the goal or target that you have. Now, obviously, you already achieved this goal. So yes, you did have milestones along the way. You thought back to the milestones that you have, but you obviously overcame them. So that leads us to the third step, and it is map out your steps or map out your strategies. Now, because you overcame them, you want to think to yourself, okay, these milestones that I had, these milestones that I experienced, and maybe any other one that you experienced, what are the ways that I overcame that? What are the things that I did that made me become better? So this is a third step to the reverse engineering process. So let's look at Tony. Let's look at some of the strategies or steps that he used to overcome his milestone. One of the things that he could have done would be brainstorm or come up with a catchy name for his podcast. Then another could be invest in quality equipment, or invest in equipment that is okay enough to film high quality episodes. Then he'd probably need to plan and create maybe about 3 to 4 episodes at the start, just so he wouldn't run out of content ideas or lose consistency and then not be able to post. Then of course he'd have to think of what hosting platform he's going to use. He has to think of whether it would be Spotify or Google or Anchor. Basically think of the platform that you're going to use, and also think of your distribution channels. Are you going to be sharing the links on your WhatsApp, your Instagram, your Facebook, your Twitter? What are you going to be doing? How are you going to get your stuff to the eyes of people? And these are just some of the things that Tony came up with to overcome those milestones that he initially had. You want to think of every possible thing that your future self did to overcoming that milestone, and you want to pen these things down. But now, if you're anything like me and you want to have all your boxes checked, you want to have everything sorted out, then you probably will have a lot of steps mapped out already. You probably have like 10 or 20 and everything. So the next step would be to prioritize and sequence. Basically what this does is, now that you mapped out the steps, you want to think about priority. You want to think about which one goes first, which one matters most, which one can I get started with, because at the end of the day, you cannot go around this haphazardly. You want to start step by step, depending on the kind of budget that you have, depending on which matters most now. Prioritize and sequence. Let's look at what Tony did to prioritize and sequence these steps. For example, Tony would obviously have come up with the podcast name. He would have thought of where he's going to host it. He would have thought of how he's going to get it to the eyes of people before even buying any equipment. So you see that one must come before the other. You want to prioritize because you cannot map out all the steps at once. Sometimes some of these milestones or some of these steps that you have mapped out would be done whilst you have already started. You will not be able to do everything before, and this is why you prioritize and you sequence, because they are necessities. There are things you must do before you follow through with the idea, or before you go on with the idea, and there are other things that can probably wait in between. Now we go over to step 6. This is one of my favorites, and it is developing strategies. Now you know which steps go in order, you know which particular steps is going to take first, second, third, and fourth in your order of priority. So what you want to do is now develop strategies around them. So for our podcast friend, for Tony, what he might do would be to look for specific days in the week where he's able to make those podcasts, and maybe another day of the week where he's going to edit them, and then the days where he's going to keep posting. He's going to probably think of how to maybe collaborate with some influencers or some of his popular friends, or some of the techniques he's going to use. What social media are people on? When am I going to be posting? Am I going to use broadcast channels? Am I going to pay, advert channels and all of these kind of things? So you want to develop strategies for each of these steps, right? So if you want to get an iPhone, for example, let's say you don't have a good phone, right, and you want to get a proper camera. I know this is not Tony's area, right? This is probably like a YouTube kind of thing, right? You might have to come up with a way in which you raise the money, who you are going to ask, who you are going to borrow from, or these kind of things. Basically come up with strategies for each of these steps, because if you don't do this, you might be going back to the old system that we talked about before, basically the regular goal setting. This is what makes the difference. This is what changes everything. That each step that you have created has a strategy in place. You know how you are going to achieve that. All right, you know how you're going to achieve that, and those steps that you put in the map line are not just there. You know how they are going to be achieved. We head over to step 6, and it is build flexibility into the plan. Obviously, your future self has already achieved all of these things. If you've set goals, you will know that more often than not, the goals that you set at the start are not necessarily the things that you achieve. So for example, if you started the podcast with Time Out with Tony, it's possible that you change the name later on to maybe just your first name and your last name, or change it to something else. What I'm trying to say is basically be open to flexibility. Your future self was, right? Because you would have gotten feedback from your audience. Okay, Tony, these are the kind of podcast episodes I like, these are the kinds that I don't like, or suggestions. Oh, you can make more of these type of episodes and everything. So you build flexibility, right? You're not set in stone and say, okay, this is how it starts and this is how it must end. Nothing really works that way. So you must just be open and flexible to getting your stuff done and becoming that person that you have envisioned in your head. Then the final step is continuous improvement. You want to keep getting better. You want to keep getting better at what it is that you're doing, the strategies that you have adopted, all the feedback you have gotten from people, gotten from friends, gotten from family, whatever it is your goal is, you want to refine. If you have like an academic goal, maybe the study method that you started with is no longer working for you, right? Maybe you now have more things on your plate, so you have to think of other things to do. You have to think of, a way you can fit your study into your schedule and all these kind of things. Just continue improving, continue getting better. As we round off this video, I want to tell you that mastering your goals through reverse engineering offers a transformative approach by coming up with a clear vision, breaking down that journey into multiple steps, and then staying adaptable along the way sets you up for success. Remember, success is genuinely not just about the destination, it's about the journey, and this is what reverse engineering offers you. You are so focused on the journey and then how you overcame these milestones that you already predicted in your head, all right? And all of these things just make for an enjoyable experience, because you focus way more on the journey than you did the outcome. So here's your journey of growth, resilience, and achievement. May the principles of reverse engineering guide you to great triumphs, one step at a time. This video is sort of project based. It's most useful when you're working on a big project or a big task, a big goal, as it were. But in next week's video, I'm going to be teaching on how you can take control over your life. That includes the small tasks and the big tasks. So for that and more, stay tuned, and remember, I'm rooting for you. Take care.